Thank you, Kenny. I first want to thank everybody for sitting in the back. I definitely look better from back there, so I appreciate it. I want to say I'm super excited to be here live in the flesh. This is my second time in Utah. I'm from New Jersey, and to not be in a Zoom and be in real life at a conference is super awesome. And before I jump into it, I just want to see, is there any Utah Jazz fans around here? All right. I'm a Knicks fan. We won't talk any basketball at all here. But I will say one thing. I mean, I really respect John Stockton, Karl Malone, growing up. I love them as teammates. And to be on the same stage or floor where they are is super awesome. And if you ask me, I think Byron Russell definitely, or Jordan definitely pushed off on Byron Russell. They should have that championship, and I'm going to give it to you guys. So going into it, I'm going to talk a little bit about, first I'll go into my background. So I am the co-founder of Welcome. I'll tell you a little bit about Welcome. But I've spent the last 15 years of my career in HR, compensation, and in people. My background has spanned in early stage startups, high growth, working in New York City, but also around the globe, Belfast, India, Gurgaon, India. I was fortunate to work with a lot of lucky early stage startups like LimeWire, Spotify, Foursquare. And most recently, I was the chief people officer of a company called Slice, and joined there when we were about 20 people, helped scale that team to about 1,000 people globally. And I'll tell you one thing that was a thorn in my side while we were scaling, and probably a big reason why I'm bald today, was around compensation. Compensation was always a thorn. And it was always one thing of like understanding what you should pay, how you should pay it, and what the market is and the trends that are happening. But more, it was around candidates and employees understanding what their compensation means. And I'm not just talking about base. I'm talking about their base, their bonus, their equity. What's the value of their equity today? What's the equity value in the future if something happens? What are their benefits and perks worth? Like there's a lot of investment that goes in there, but I saw that candidates and employees weren't recognizing it and saw that as a real disadvantage as a company that was scaling quickly. And that's why I built Welcome. We looked at Welcome and we looked at reimagining the offer experience. So instead of that boring PDF document that you get with a bunch of legal jargon and some base numbers and an equity number that nobody really understood, we built a digital offer experience. People are able to log in and see, okay, what is my benefits worth? Who am I reporting into? What are my perks? What is the value of my perks? What is the value of my equity today? And if there's an event that happens in the future, what could that potentially be worth? And we launched that first product, and we saw such excitement from the market, from our customers, that they loved the experience we were giving to candidates. They asked us to build a similar experience for total rewards for their existing employees. So how do you showcase somebody that's been there 2 years and to really showcase, again, what's the value of everything that you're giving into and investing in them? So what we're going to talk about here on the agenda is how do you make compensation your superpower? And a couple things I want to hit here is why is it more important than ever to communicate to employees and candidates that? Secondly, how do you get good compensation data for your employees and candidates? Why do you need to be proactive on communicating the total compensation to your employees? And then also some steps to help you build your comp plan for your company. And then, other thing. So I know we just had lunch. I know we're probably a little tired. I'm going to try to give you some experiences of some things or some mistakes I had so you don't screw up. Or if you want to take a nap after lunch, you can do that too. But I want to make this a little interactive. So if I can have everyone just raise your right hand. Okay. So if you understand the number of your base, what is the base value? Or if you don't understand it, sorry about that. If you don't understand your base value, lower your right hand. Okay, some people lowered that. That's sorry about that. If you don't understand your bonus and how you get your full bonus, I want you to lower your right hand. Next, what is the value? If you don't understand the value of your benefits and perks, lower your right hand to the dollar of your benefits and perks. Okay, not a lot of people there. Okay, if you don't understand your equity And what's the value of your equity today and the value in the future? I want you to lower your right hand. Okay, there's only one person with their hand raised. How much do you make? What is your total compensation? Okay, don't tell me that. You guys aren't alone. 95% of candidates and employees don't understand their total compensation, which is a huge disadvantage for a company that's trying to showcase that to their employee base, right? And why do you ask that, right? 40%, this is something we found out at Welcome. So we've now communicated over $1 billion in offers to candidates and employees, and we found that 40% of it is non-cash. So your employees aren't understanding their total compensation. So you're investing in them, and they're still not understanding the full value. So it's like if you gave your friend $100 every day, but he only recognized or she only recognized $60. Wouldn't you be frustrated? You're giving them $100 and they're saying they only recognize $60 of that. Sorry, this clicker here is great. The market at a glance. So the last 2.5 years, we can all say, have been a little bit of an adventure, right? A little wild, not outside in the world, but also in the workplace. And a couple of things I wanted to highlight was remote work, right? 2.5 years ago, this wasn't a thing. It is now a thing. You have your employees that are located in Utah, but now want to work somewhere else. Do you adjust their cost of living? Do you adjust their salaries? There was a lot of things that you had to do there. There was a hiring boom, right? Everybody was hiring. How do you compete on offers? How do you compete to an employee to really showcase, hey, you should stay here, this is what you're doing? Also, the Great Resignation, right? Everybody saw that. People were coming into Utah, probably from San Francisco or New York City, offering crazy salaries. How do you communicate not just the base, but the total compensation for them? And then finally, kind of the world we're in right now, this economic uncertainty. You have employees, you have candidates thinking like, hey, we had a bad quarter, or hey, we had a bad half. What does this mean for me? So there's real anxiety there. And we saw this, a PwC study that we had, 50% of companies are anticipating reduction in headcount. 52% of them are looking at hiring freezes. And 44%, which is a huge number, are thinking about rescinding job offers. So your employees, your candidates that you're going out there are reading this. They're trying to have an understanding, and they're seeing like, oh wow, like this is why I should be alarmed. Next, the Great Resignation rages on. 88% of employees that they can currently see that they're employed in right now would change where they're working to go into a different field. So they're now saying, okay, if things aren't going so well here, should I look at another career path? So there's a lot of changes, and that number jumps up for Gen Z, is 94%. For millennials, 96%. Next, I mean, this is, you turn on the news, it's inflation, the inflation numbers, right? There's anxiety there. People are seeing things are costing a lot more, but their paychecks aren't increasing with that amount. So how are you highlighting that? How are you highlighting the total compensation, not just the cash component, is a big thing. Next, and this is something that we saw with our customer base. So think about it. At Welcome, we're able to see their benefits. We're able to see their perks. The companies that are at different stages, what are they offering? And we saw what candidates were accepting. There's a lot of things that you have to look at, like, is it flexible hours? Is it remote locations? Is there some different perk that you can offer? Gym reimbursement, something like that. But then showcasing what is that value to that candidate. And I'll tell you something here. When I was a head of HR at a company at Slice, I would have employees that would come up to me 2 years into their tenure and tell me, wow, this is awesome. I didn't know we had this great educational benefit that you can go out and learn anything, which was great. I was so excited that they knew about it, but we were investing in that for 2 years and they didn't take advantage of it. So I saw a huge impact there. This shouldn't be a shock to anybody. I mean, cost of replacing an employee that leaves your organization is 1/2 to 2 times the value of that salary. And think about it, if somebody leaves the organization, what do you have to do? You have to launch a new recruiting search. You have to go in and have people, managers, interview that person. You have people that are getting to that final stage on the offer side, and let's just say they accept an offer, and I'll just tell you, the average cost to get to an offer letter, it's something that we ran for a software engineer, is about $20,000. The acceptance rate for an engineer is about 40%. Let's just say that person accepts, the first candidate you find. To get them ramped up, to get them up to speed, productivity of where that former employee was, months and months. So there's a cost to that value there. And the annual overall turnover, something that came out in 2021, is about 26%. That's a jump from 22% the year prior to that. So if you look at an organization, let's say an organization that has 100 people, and average salary of about 50,000. If they have that same turnover, they're spending, or from productivity lost, they're losing anywhere from 600,000 to 2.6 million on just replacing employees. The other thing, and there's no number to measure this, but the impact on team morale is a huge thing. And think about it, once somebody leaves, your top performers pop their head up. What's going on? Why are they leaving? Is something wrong with our culture? Is there an issue with, is the business going to do well? You have them now not focused on work, but focused on their next opportunity. There's a huge thing on that of people getting worried when this starts to happen. Other thing, 75% of employees would consider leaving job over a different for more comp. That's no surprise, right? People would leave for more money. But a survey, this is actually from PayScale, 51% of workers who are paid above market or at market felt they were underpaid. And my hypothesis for that is that they're focused on one number. They're focused on their base. They might know their bonus, but they're not looking at everything else you're investing, that other 40% that matters. They're not looking at the equity of the options that you have and what is that potentially being worth in the future, right? Next thing I want to hit. Good comp data is hard to find, but why? A lot of these legacy products rely on survey-based stale reporting. And if you look at survey-based, especially on compensation data, there's a couple things you need to recognize, or a couple things that you need to happen for it to be valid, right? People have to be honest about their compensation, right? They have to say, hey, this is what I make. I trust this survey. I'm going to put that in there. Let's just say everybody's honest. They're going to tell you exactly what they make. What happens with survey data? It lags the market 6 to 8 months. And if you look at the world how it is, things are changing, things are evolving. You might have a market today, but 6 months from now, it might be totally different. So how do you get better data? Other things, so let's just say HR teams don't rely on data. What do? They Google it. They look at other data providers. They look at their network and ask, hey, you're hiring a senior engineer in Utah. What are you paying for it? Or they just rely on what candidates ask, right? Next thing here, and this is about the survey data and some of the things I already hit on, trends are changing so rapidly now, especially in the market that we're in. Things are hiring boom to the great resignation to where we are today. So the data that you have today or yesterday's data is not valid today. So how do you get better with that data? But there's a better way to do it, and this is what we did at Welcome, and it's real-time data, and we'll get to that. So what's the impact on having real-time compensation data? And there's one thing that, and I'll tell you as an HR leader, I never wanted to get a deal on a candidate or a deal on an employee, right? Quote unquote, a deal. Because I felt like that person that was in that seat, if we paid them on their market, they're just gonna get frustrated. They're gonna find out what the market is. They might get another job offer. They leave. There's a cost to replace that person, right, that we hit on. But to have accurate data, real-time data that you can kind of look into, it's so powerful, right? It helps you make better decisions throughout the whole employee's life cycle. And I'll hit you a little on the employee life cycle here. One, setting up your compensation strategy. And that's when having an understanding of what do you want to pay at that time for that person. What is your cash component? What is your non-cash component? How do you get there? The other thing is during your recruiting and hiring stage. We found that with our customers, 90%, even if you build your recruiting strategy in the beginning of the year and a half, 90% of the time that you are looking at compensation data when you're about to hire an employee. So during that stage is a huge, huge advantage to have that real-time compensation data. Other thing is during comp time, right? During performance reviews. How do you make sure your top performers are paid at market? You don't want to lose a top performer. There's a huge impact. So that is a big thing. And then the other thing is just regular recalibrating, right? During the employee's tenure. When employees express desires to leave, you want to have that data to have an understanding to push back and say, yes, this is where you are. There's another job offer here, but here's where the market is, and here's all the other things that we do for you. Another thing, and this is something that we saw at Welcome, was enlisting executive support. HR teams are not the ones that are the only ones having conversations with employees around compensation. How do you get your exec team on the same page and understanding what is your comp strategy? How do you pay? How do we articulate our benefits and perks? How do we articulate what our equity is worth and what is it potentially worth down the road? So this is not shocking, hopefully, for everyone here. I don't know if we have any CFOs here, but people are expensive. People are really expensive. There's 70% of your operating cost is people and the employees, and they should be, right? So how do you make sure that you have that real-time data to make sure that you're rewarding those top performers along the way? Other impact of having unsound compensation strategy or not a good comp philosophy, high turnover. High turnover, we talked about the impact and what that does there. Other thing is low acceptance. A low acceptance, all that work you do to get that candidate to that final stage and then not accepting an offer. I will tell you, we work with a company called Angie, and Angie started using Welcome. They saw an 18% uptick of using our Welcome platform to really talk about total compensation, to articulate to engineers, hey, what's the value? So an 18% uptick, how much savings are you having there? Other thing, and this is something that did not hit us over the head right away, was pay inequity of not having this compensation data. And I'll just give you an example there, and I'll go to the next slide. When you don't have good compensation data, what do you rely on as a company? And we asked our customers this. They said, we rely on what the candidate asked for. We're just gonna give them what they asked for. So I'll give you an example. John, who's a software engineer, asked for $10 an hour. And John wants $10 an hour. There's a software engineer, Samantha, who asked for $9 an hour. So our customers are saying, hey, I'm just gonna make them both happy. I'm gonna give John 10, I'm gonna give Samantha 9, because that's what they asked for, that's what we wanna pay them. But if they had real-time data, they would have an understanding that the market is, maybe it's $8 an hour. And they articulate, here's $8 to John, here's $8 to Samantha, here's what else you're getting, your total comp, your benefits, your perks, your equity, all that there. And this is a study that we pulled from HBR. We saw that women would ask for 6% less in salaries next to their male counterparts. And that went up if you looked at the level of experience. So VP to C level, that would go up to 10% to 12%. And that is a huge compounding effects down the road, right? So question, hopefully you're all asking this, is how do I get good compensation data? Pause. Welcome. We started building a first real-time data set around compensation because we have the offer product. Because we have the offer product that can tell you, hey, who's accepting the offer? Where is their location? What is their level? We can tell you if the offer's been declined at this stage and where's their location. Same thing with total rewards. So we built out integrations with payroll providers, with cap table providers, to pull in real-time data sets around what are people getting paid at this time, to show any additional trends down the road. And we built out the compensation data set there. Our data is getting better. I'll get to there and how we're doing that down the road. Next one, I want to just talk about proactive versus reactive approach. And this is something I screwed up a lot, and I think a lot of HR leaders would probably tell you the same thing. I took a very reactive approach on basically on our employees. So I would have, let's just say, wait till an employee comes to my office and tells me, hey, Rick, I got a better offer. I'm going to join this company. And what would I do there? I would tell them, hey, these are all the things you get at this company. This is what we're doing here. Do you know what your equity's worth? I'd roll out circus. I would have the red carpet. I would show them all these awesome things. But at that time, an employee's already done. They're already out. They've clocked out. But taking a proactive approach and showcasing them their total compensation and showing it over their head, during performance review time, and continuing to show them what is the value of your total compensation around base, bonus, equity, all that stuff, we saw it helped with retention with our existing customers. There was no longer those surprises. Oh, I didn't know I had that. Yeah, but I already made a decision. I'm going to move on. They know what they're getting. They understand the total investment that you are putting in to your employee base. So I just wanted to leave some steps here on kind of like, hey, what can I do? How do I improve my comp philosophy? And how do I make compensation my superpower at a company? A couple things were create and communicate your compensation philosophy and strategy, right? Create and communicate your compensation philosophy and strategy. One, and I'll just tell you about comp strategy, it outlines your company's approach towards pay and benefits. Have an understanding of what that is. That's everything that includes your business position on the job market, the level of total cash, the main bonus principles in the organization, rules on base salary and employee benefits. Get to a good spot where you all feel good and get alignment from your exec teams of like, this is the approach we're going to do, see if there's buy-in across the board. We talked about this. Create the clear process, but then communicate that clear process. When do you do review of comp? Do you do it annually? Do you do it biannually? We actually had it at my last startup. We built out around compensation. We did it real time, all the time. You were able to kind of look at comps. Managers were able to propose things. You can go there. It was nuts. I would not suggest doing something like that. Pick a time, but then communicate it to the team of like, this is when we're going to review compensation. Tell them how decisions are being made. Tell them where your sources for data and what you're using and how you got there. Over communicate this to the employee base so they have an understanding of what you're doing. Finally, decide on the level of salary transparency. Hopefully I've changed one person's mind of why you communicate everything around total compensation and have an understanding of that for employees. There is another philosophy and something I do not go into about radical transparency, allowing everybody to know what everyone makes. And that's an engineer knowing what a product designer makes, a product designer knowing what a salesperson makes. I've never seen that scale. That is something of transparency I would not want to do. I think it's just human nature. You have well, I work so much harder. Why does that person get paid more? But I do believe in communicating transparency, compensation to your complete employee base for their individual value of their total comp. Next thing, we talked a little bit about this. Train your managers. They're the ones that have these conversations on a daily basis. They have the tough conversations, right? Like, I've been here this long. I've hit my number here. Why am I only paid here? Why is my base number here? My friend makes this. Communicate around total compensation so they have that understanding. They have the tools to understand, to push back on an employee and say, here are all the other things. Here's our comp philosophy at the company. Again, enlist them to be part of your team and understanding that. Then finally, I feel like I've hit this nail a couple times. Emphasize total comp, right? Emphasize the cash, benefits, the perks, the equity value, all the things that you invest as an employee. Make sure that they understand that. Make sure that they have an understanding of like, what does that mean for them personally, and especially around equity. Show them the potential of the future of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. You stay here, what could this be worth in the future? Again, no promises, but how do you make sure they have an understanding of it? So just some steps, takeaways: communicate a compensation philosophy and strategy, create a clear process for compensation conversations, decide on your level of transparency, train your managers, and then emphasize that total comp. Okay, I went a little too quick on this slide. I actually had some news we wanted to talk about. Welcome has been acquired by Bamboo HR. We are super excited to be part of that team. And I think that is how our data is going to get stronger. We are excited to continue the mission, what they've built at Bamboo HR, and basically their mission of setting people free to do great work. And we are excited to be on that journey with them. And then finally, I just want to thank everyone for taking your time, especially after lunch, listening to what I have to say. And if you want a demo, here is our website, my email. But this is great. I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
We want to thank Rick. Yeah, let's give one more round of applause for Rick and that great information. We're excited to have them as part of Bamboo HR and being part of the family. I was sad I wasn't able to say anything at the beginning, but I didn't want to ruin Rick's ability to kind of reveal that information, that news. Now, we do have a few minutes here. Now, it's difficult to do Q&A with such a large expanse of stairs. I'm not going to run all the way up the stairs, but if anyone wants to come out into the aisles and come down here, we'll take a few questions for Rick. And if you'd rather not do it that way, you could come out on after, come down here and talk to Rick and ask some questions. So anyone want to come down and ask Rick any questions? If you do, just come down here and I'll give you the mic. Just raise your hand if you have questions. Great, we have one right here.
Hey, thanks for the information. So you talk a lot about total compensation, and I generally agree with what you're saying there. Where do you find the differentiation factor? Like, you talk about benefits and whatnot. Like, if you're a startup, it might be more interesting, but as you start to scale to a more established organization, like, healthcare is healthcare, So what's your thoughts on where people should press and just be at a point of parity and a point of differentiation across total?
Sorry, I didn't catch the end of it.
So, like, what areas do you think are most important to just be at parity to the market and a unique point of differentiation when it comes to the different specters across total compensation?
Yeah, that's a great question. It would depend on the stage of the company, I would say. So early stage company, you're not going to compete on cash, right? Cash, you're competing with a larger stage company. They have a lot more there. You definitely want to highlight what we see from our customers is the benefits, the perks, the unique things that you're offering. Maybe you're offering 100% of medical and dental and vision and everything like that, something that we did at our early days. There's real value in that. That's $20,000. Like, how do you showcase it? And then also, if you are an early stage company, like, are you highlighting the equity side of it, the potential upside, that hockey stick growth that we always talk about at early stage startups? Again, no guarantees, but what it could be worth. Later stage company usually have better benefits, better time off, better all that. There are definitely things that we see from later stage companies that can highlight cash. Not only cash is still king, right? Like, cash is a big thing, but talk a little bit about the benefit side of it. Talk a little bit about the perks that these early stage companies might not have.
Okay, we got another question here.
How do you get your real-time data?
Oh, how do we get our real-time data? Great question. So how we do it, so our real-time data is from our offer product, from our total rewards. It is our customers' data that is anonymized, randomized, and then we reshare it. So you would never know if you're using the platform which company that data is. All we tell you is location, we tell you stage, and there's so many companies on there that you would be able to track it. So that's how we are able to, that real-time data. And then around the total rewards, we built out integrations with payroll providers, with cap table providers. So it's an easy process for customers to integrate that information, and then that's how we get the data source. Yeah.
Hi there. Thanks for your info. My name's Jordan. My partner and I work for a recruiting firm, Aston Carter, and we see a lot of pay data, right?
Yeah.
We're talking with hiring managers and whatnot. Where we struggle is we know that people need to have better, or companies need to have better compensation, or we find that some companies are resistant though. How do you consult or convince those partners that are resistant to increasing pay or total compensation? What's your strategy there?
Yeah, I mean, we point to real data, right? I think it's the trouble sometimes that, like, I'm just putting myself as an HR leader when I hear from somebody else, oh, this is what the market, where are you getting that data source? Is it from your mother, your father, somewhere else, different company? This, when we can tell them, like, this is actually what the market, we can actually show trends. We can push back on this is what we're seeing from a data source. So like, we can help by saying what the data source is. Yep,
Awesome, fantastic. Anyone else have any questions up here in the front?
right here.
Oh, we got another one up here. Okay, great. I shouldn't have left. Should have stayed right there.
How do you monetize the value of being able to work remote to an employee? Like when you talk about total compensation,
Yeah.
is that something you can do or have done?
So that's a good question. I don't think you can. I don't think there's a number that you can tie into it, but it is something you should showcase, right? Like, is it a hybrid office? Is it, hey, you can work in Utah, you can have that, or you can work in San Francisco, or you can work in Hawaii. Showcasing it in the offer letter, we don't put it in the total compensation because there's no way really to put a number there.
But it saves the employer, so can that be added to compensation in that way or not? Like the value they would have paid in the office?
So you're saying it saves money to the employers putting it there. I mean, it would be a benefit for the employers to say, but as a candidate, as an employee, there's no real monetary value there. But they would say like, hey, I can live in this location and work for this company here, or I can live anywhere in the world and still make that salary. So are you highlighting that in the offer letter or in the total rewards?
So your data sources, how far do you go beyond the United States? Are they international?
So today, great question. So today, US, we are expanding. I mean, a lot of our companies we work today don't just have locations in the US, they have other offices. So we are building that over time. So we're excited for the future on like outside of the US.
I'm curious, given your real-time data set, what impact are you seeing inflation playing in the recent salaries? Is that coming into play pretty significantly, partially? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so we actually pulled that the last month, and we haven't seen any real adjustment there. Anything, like we aren't seeing any changes that are impacted by inflation. I do expect to see that and having some changes there, but will it match inflation? I don't know.
Okay, fantastic. We're going to take one more question here, and if you have other questions at the end, you can come up after. I also want to make a mention that there's another session in the Ethos track that starts at 3 p.m. where we'll be talking about building culture with Heather Younger. So make sure to come back here at 3 p.m. or just stick around, and there'll be another session here on the Ethos track. So last question here.
Yes, I was wondering if you could speak to the gender pay gap and what you see around that and how that could change.
Yeah, and I think I hit a little bit on that slide over there. When you don't have an accurate data source or something you can trust, we're seeing it from our customers. They're relying on what is somebody asking for. And they're thinking like, hey, I have good intentions. I want to make sure I'm giving what they're asking for. We feel like with that real-time data and then articulating everything around total compensation, even if you have that John and Samantha, can you get them to the same level and then articulate everything else around total compensation? So we hope, again, we're not saying we're going to solve that, but we're hoping with real-time data, we can give companies that real information and then help them articulate it to their candidates and employees so we can help with that.
Awesome. Thank you, Rick. Everyone, one more round of applause for Rick. We appreciate him sticking around and answering those questions. And thanks, everyone, for being here, and enjoy the rest of your time at Silicon Slopes.